Morning, guys. Tim from RaceBiz. Another episode of Racehorse Junkies. This is part one. 100% real with RaceBiz. This is my friend Gary. We're very passionate about racing. This is how we make our living. It's a hard way to make an easy living. And that Racehorse Junkies is anything about racing. It's a 30-minute segment which we do once a fortnight. I've just had a week off, which is something you need to do to have the right attitude in this game. Gary's going to take over. He's got a few things he wants to talk about, so I'll pass it over to you, Gaz.
Okay, look, I agree totally, Tim. One of the most important things, I think, is to have a very fresh mental approach. And certainly in this game, you can have some very, very tough times where heads up, heads down go against you, and that's why it's vital to keep fresh. And personally, I try to do about four days max a week of active betting, because I have to do a lot of post-form as well. But I do find that having those couple of days off and every now and then having a week off as a break is just, you come back so totally refreshed. It's not funny. Yeah, what I'd like to talk about is last week, one of the areas I specialise in doing is that New South Wales, Northern Rivers, and a lot of the country provincial tracks in New South Wales, also doing the city track as well. But last week was on Thursday was Lismore Cup. Lismore was a very interesting track, and one of the things I do is I keep a chart actually for all the tracks I do of exactly how much the distance is in the turning. So like at Lismore over 1,300 metres, or actually all the turns at Lismore 800 to 600 metres, you've got approximately about 300 metres of turning. So, and the 600 to 400, you've got about 250 metres. So, the total turns on distance on turns is about 550 metres for all the races up to the 1560s. And then when you get to the distance races, you've almost got 1,000 metres of turns. So you've got to be able to calculate that, because obviously horses have to be in the right position going around the turn, or it's very hard for them. And that's where they really, going wide, no cover really does take effect, or if you're caught out in the wind. Now, one of the other things I always track with every meeting I do post-race is exactly where the horse is settled. Keep that into my database. So when I'm doing the meetings coming up, because each track's a little bit different. Now, Lismore, last Thursday, actually, positions, the rail was out 1.5 metres. Actually, positions 1 to 2, 6 of 8 winners settled 1 to 2. It was a track condition of 3. But if you look back in the history of Lismore, that's not uncommon, because on the 24th of August, positions 1 to 3, 5 of 7 and 3 led all the way. Track condition of 3. And if you go back to the 18th of July as well, we had all races, positions 1 to 3, right? And the track condition that day actually varied, was started at a 5 and finished as a 4. So it's very common there. What I find is that on a standard average meeting of 8 races, I look at if 5 of the 8 races positions are 1 to 4, I call that a track fair, because it means you can come. That's about average of what they do on doing, hundreds and hundreds of meetings, and that means horses still can come from behind. But if you look at and what I also look at, especially when I'm doing the form on track condition 7 on the 3rd of August at Lismore, it was an off lead day because 6 of the 7 settled 4th or worse. So it's important when you're doing the form as well to look at the horses who do really well against the bias, and certainly other horses may win or run very well only because they had a massive bias in their favour. And I do use that to penalise or give a bonus to horses or forgive horses when I'm actually doing the form. And over the coming episodes I'll be picking different tracks each time to talk about. But Lismore is a good one. And also always be very careful when you look at when they put how far the rail is out, because usually, as a rule of thumb, the further out the rail is, the more it's going to favour towards leaders. Okay. Right? But, Lismore, the last few meetings has been 1.5 metres. But if it goes back to actually rail true, it's a strange track. If you go back the last couple of years, it's even been faster. It's one of those very much normally favours leaders. But again, if you are betting, look, a lot of the races I don't do so much on maidens. So what I'll do is I'll look at the first couple of races. And if I see all of a sudden the pattern's going the other way, they're racing wide, I will change my ratings on the day. So it's important as well with bias. Preferably to have done your pre-form by knowing what's happened in the past, but often these days with Sky or whatever channels you're watching Racing New South Wales, we actually have an advantage now without having to be there, that we can actually see how the races are actually running. So that's a big advantage. So just an extra way that we'd like to keep you educated on how to actually make a living out of the game, or more importantly, stay profitable.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, to stay profitable, if you're not willing to do the homework and put the time into it, it's detrimental to what your punting's going to turn out like. You know, like with us, it's all about our ratings. I mean, I find it very difficult to just look at a form guide without a rating to think I can find a true favourite in a race. Because 40% of favourites are false favourites in most races. You know, and if you back false favourites in that situation, and the average favourite was $2.33, you're not going to make a profit at the end of the day. But if you can work out the false favourites in that sort of situation, what I find is if you can weigh it down and get it down to, eliminate the 40% and get into the 30% win bracket, your win percentage then increases to 34%. All right, rather than have a loss. I understand where you come from, because when you talk about track bias, it really does change the way you look at it, the way a race is formatted. The way we look at it, because we understand that you've got to use your speed maps, you've got to use your times, and you've got to use the position. A lot of punters don't take into consideration the position of where a horse is going to run in a race. And that
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And also, as I said, I think that there's a lot of horses, running styles, and just the way they are suited to each track. There are horses that need a big, wide open track and come from behind, and others where clearly, it favours horses coming off the front. And it's the same as jockeys. The younger apprentices, most of them are very good when they're riding up the front. So if their horse is on pace, it certainly suits them. And taking that weight claim off for a horse who's going to be on the pace makes a lot of sense. If the horse is coming from last in a big field, I would rather have an experienced jockey on any day than a young 3 or 4 claiming apprentice who's going to have to weave their way through 12 or 13 horses, which can be difficult.
Well, it's like, because I do Victoria and I do Brisbane when I do most of my racing, and Doomben 1,350 metres is a prime example of what you're talking about, the positioning of a horse. If a horse draws 1, 2 or 3 and is a horse that can lead and be on the pace, if they can ping on the home turn and get 2 lengths in front on the home turn, they very seldom get run down.
Absolutely.
That's something that over the years, and I was shown that by another professional punter. He said to me, this is where you can make a lot of money at Doomben over this distance. It's the same as in Melbourne. A lot of guys don't like doing the straight 6 races, but there are horses that always run well on the straight 6, and I'm like you. I like horses on the pace and that are drawn in a good position. You can staying races for me, I tend not to follow a lot of, because the majority of them, they change each week. But with this time of the year, when you got class animals, it completely changes the game. It was like Caulfield a couple of weeks ago when they were running at Caulfield. Everything on pace was winning, and everything that was drawn 5 or in were also winning the races. And there was very few of those were the favoured horses that won. And yet on Saturday, they were coming just off pace, but the favoured horses were winning most of the races. There was very little value to be found on Saturday, I found. And I was off for the week, and and it'd take me 3 or 4 days to catch up to what's gone on. I didn't even open a form guide. It wasn't a form guide, whatever. And like you said, attitude is, with me, attitude is the biggest thing when it comes to racing. You've got to take a break, but you've also got to do your form. I can't think I can get back into it after having a week off if I don't go back over what's going on.
Absolutely. I think most recreational people who bet on the races do very little or any post form. To be quite frank, everyone I've ever met who makes a profit, whether they be doing it professionally or it's their major hobby, you'll find that they're doing more post form than they are pre-form, because by doing a lot of post form, it makes it a lot easier to do the pre-form, and that's where the winners are, right? And then, I look at the replays after the races are over, etc., make comments, so that when I'm doing it, it jogs your memory. When you're doing large areas, like as I said, I'm doing all of New South Wales, but I also do a bit of Victoria, especially now we're getting into the spring carnival, and also bits of more Queensland probably in winter where the tracks are drier than I do in summer, because there's a lot of races to be doing in New South Wales, and I do avoid the very heavy tracks or the heavy tracks, because I find them just too difficult when they're coming out wide. I find that those meetings I forgive, but I still have to do post-race analysis on them. The other area I was going to say, when you're talking about tracks and barriers, I find the 1,400 metres of all the ones I've ever done at Caulfield to be the hardest. If you're drawn out wide at 1,400 metres at Caulfield because you've got that run to the turn, you are dead, right? Because you can get caught out, and if you start going 3 wide, no cover, 4 wide, no cover, around turns and all that, it's a very, very tough one. And that's the other thing I would say. In all the tracks I do, I measure how far to the turn from the barrier that influences. Because coming out wide is not a problem if you've got a good run to the turn and you've got plenty of speed, especially if there's nothing drawn for a few horses inside of you. Even if you slightly miss it, you can get that acceleration and away you go. That's fine, right? Otherwise, drawn inside, I would prefer, especially closer to the turn. But, that's why it's important to know how far that is to the turn. And sometimes if they're coming out of a chute, some of those chutes, you've only got 150 metres. Now, if you slightly miss it and you're drawn outside, barrier 10, you're slightly missing it, you're in trouble, right? You can win, but I tell you what, the amount of times that you've backed a horse, it's stuck 3 wide, no cover, well, good luck. It's usually a losing bet. So I do find that to be fairly important. Look, when you talk about about distance races, I actually find my most profitable are distance races where there are 9 or more runners. I will rate the races with 7, 8, but preferably 9 or more. The problem with the small ones, and that's why there's a few going around these days. It's harder to get, especially in country areas, large distance fields. But with 4 or 5 or 6 runners, the problem is pace of the race.
Yes.
They amble along. And if you've got a horse who may be clearly the best, but there's no speed on whatsoever, boy, they can get beaten, right? Yeah. That becomes a problem. And that is another area why I always track as well. What is the speed of the race? If it's very, very slow sectionals, whatever else, very slow leader sectionals, it can have an effect on the post form as well. To be very, because if you're going to go into a standard run race next time or a faster run race, it's going to dramatically affect those particular ratings for the next one. So it's important to take that into account. Whereas if it's an evenly run race or a proper run race, it's much better. It's the same as if there's a tearaway leader. Obviously, the horse coming from behind can get going a lot easier than if they've been walking. So that's something else I do like. And at the moment, though, with Spring Carnival on and all that, both in Melbourne and Sydney, we are getting much better distance races and we are getting full fields. Yeah. So, they become a very good betting proposition.
Yeah. Well, what I found, like I talked to a jockey, a well-known jockey once, and he said the difference with small fields and big fields are when you're in a big field, you've got to look after yourself and you can only concentrate on what you're riding. But he said in a small field, it's a lot easier to play with the favourites because he said you've got more room to move. And he said, big fields, they're stretched out and they need more room. He said, small fields are more concertinaed up, right? So they can see what is happening within the small fields. He said, that's why you can tend to get a lot more value in a smaller field than a large field. And I understand where you come from with the staying races. See, my favourite racing is between 1,400 and 2,000. Because I don't need a sprinter, and from the way I look at it, or 1,600 to 2,000, that distance there, I don't need a sprinter. I need a fit racehorse that has got the stamina to stay. And that's why I've had most of my best luck is between 1,600 and 2,000. You know, I'm a big fan with the carnival coming on is the country cups.
Yep, agree.
You can make some very, very good money, you know, and the ratings tend to be able to help you a lot more. You know, it was like the Geelong Cup last year, Willie Pike's mount that he won on. The horse hadn't won a race for nearly a year. And if you go back and you look at the race, that was probably one of the best rides I've ever seen by a jockey, the way he brought it through the field. But it was my rated favourite at 7-1 in the race. And I think it paid about 15s. You know, that sort of thing there. And I understand where you're coming from because you look at the racing slightly differently to I do. But when we put our ratings together, there's not a huge amount of difference.
No.
You know, yours is, you know, I run my percentages between 80 and 90%. And I do what I call aggressive pricing, you know, but I can flick it from one to the other, from aggressive to average pricing, you know, and your pricing is pretty well the same as mine. But I couldn't do a race without doing a rating.
No, well, I'm the same. You know, I'm not one into, you know, the tips or whatever else. One of the problems I find with people who tell you they like such and such a horse or they get a tip on a horse is they don't know what the price is. Now, does that mean the horse should be $3.75 or is it a good bet at $9.75? Now, for me, I might do a race where I've got the field at, you know, $4 the field. Now, if the favourite is $3.50, I'm not backing that horse. If the horse is, you know, above my price, then I'm onto it. And if it's a second or third pick, I need an extra percentage overlay on my second, third or fourth picks, and I'll bet down to my fourth pick, but they have to be at a particular percentage overlay, and that guides on what I do. That's because I know with the formula I've worked on, I can back 2, 3, some rarely, but I don't want to back 4 horses, but I certainly want to be able to make a good profit if I'm backing 2 horses in a race. It's not a problem. And if the price isn't there, then I just let the race go. It's not a problem at all. And it's the same as for exotics of that. I will play exotics if I've got value on my first couple of selections, then I know that the exotics will pay overs by my odds, right? And that's what I'm looking for. You know, and, you know, I see horses going off regularly these days. There seems to be a bit of a pattern. I think it's a bit of more of a thing I've noticed since COVID times, but there seems to be an overplay on certainly, especially in the country, provincial areas where I'm betting a lot, where the horse all of a sudden comes in from $3.20 to $2.80. Then they all start going for it in the last couple of minutes. It's so overbacked and it pushes out because there also has to be a cause and effect. When you're doing pricing, you realise that. So the horse you were thinking wasn't such a good bet at $4, in the last 30 seconds, 40 seconds, especially on the fair or that, can shoot out to $6.50, $7. That becomes a great bet. The other one's an underlay. It's been fairly profitable in the last couple of months. So, you know, I find that, you know, in that last 6 or 7 minutes, I am extremely attuned into watching the betting markets and ready to pounce. At all times, I have multiple screens going because I've, you know, these days I thoroughly recommend for people to have multiple corporates as well as Betfair, everything going, because you just don't know what's going to happen. As opposed to probably a couple of years ago, I would have said that if a horse was $4.50 with 3 minutes to go, it was probably at worst going to be $5.50. Today, there's always a chance we could get to $7 because of the overbetting and what's happening. And look, it's probably to do with some major syndicates that are betting very heavily, pushing them out. Obviously, the media can all jump on with TV and all that, and everyone's pushing certain horses. And a lot of people, rather than wanting to make a profit, they're more about backing winners. For me, it's all about, you know, percentage on turnover, making a profit. That's what it's really about at the end of the day. I'd rather back one good winner for the day out of 6 races and show a profit than back, you know, 3 real shorties odds on and actually lose on the day. So, you know, it's really about what I end up on the day or over the month, which is more important what I track, that I'm really about, which is making an investment. I look at it as same as buying, you know, buying shares or whatever else. You're wanting to make a profit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with that as well. The reasoning behind the ratings is when you're backing 2 or 3 horses in a race, at the end of the day, you're going to lose a lot less money than by backing just one. And always, you've got to be open, like you say. If you've got a price to work off, you know whether you're getting value or you're not getting value, and you're getting your percentage mark that you're looking for. If you don't have some guideline to work off, because I always say, when someone gives me a tip, I always say to them, what prices should it be? And they go, what do you mean? And I go, well, if you tell me it's 5 to 1 and I walk in the tab or I look online and it's 2 to 1, I'm not going to back it. I'm not even going to consider it. And then if I do a rating and you say it should be 5 to 1 and I think it should be 20s, I'm not going to back it. You know, that's how I look at it. Or I say to them, okay, there's 20 horses in the race or 15 horses. Do you know anything about the other ones in the race? No. Oh, no.
That is absolute number one thing I found with people who own horses or are heavily connected with horses, and people I've known through stables and trainers and whatever. They all become so biased. It's like people in the AFL or NRL, whatever field they're in sport. People become too biased on their own side. It's a little bit the same with people connected with stables of that. It's about understanding. The best thing I would say is I am independent of all horses on the race I go to rate. And I could have backed that horse 3 out of the last 4 because it was an absolutely best rated horse. Doesn't matter if I've won 3 out of its last 3 starts today. It could be poorly positioned, poorly handicapped, gone to the wrong distance. It just doesn't come up. Better horses against it. Of course, the other thing is what we're talking about with doing ratings. I mean, I'm doing a combination of speed, class, the whole lot. It's up in class. It's in a totally different field. I mean, a horse that goes around, at the Willenbar in a class 1 may start at, $2.20 and be the best bet you've ever seen. And then it goes off to a midweek in, Canterbury, and it's going to be 60 to 1. Probably should be 250 to 1. Doesn't matter at 1 by 4 lengths because it's in a totally different class.
Yep.
Right. And vice versa as well. A horse who can come, dropping out of a midweek at Canterbury can go to Canberra and start, $3.50, become the best bet, even though it was, 40 to 1 last start. It really depends on the class of the race and the circumstances on the day. And as I also said, it also depends on, where it's drawn and all those other areas as well. And, a little bit of factor I do put in with jockeys and all that. But, as I said, I do factor in jockeys, trainers small, but, by and large, you will find a lot of them have affinities also with the horse. One of the things I do find is that with the female jockeys that I look for is that if they've actually ridden the horse and won on it, I find that the horses can continue, especially there's a lot of great female jockeys going around currently in country New South Wales, and a lot of them have good affinity with the horses they're on, and they ride consistently for them.
And I mean, one of the New South Wales jockeys I really like is Kathy O'Hara.
Yeah,
I think she is as good as any guy riding.
Yep.
She's strong, and she, in a finish, she'll battle it out with the best of them. She won't.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. There's but at the moment in New South Wales, there's quite a few, and they're coming out of having a great affinity with those horses, and they understand them. I think they're more caring on the horse, and therefore they get the best value out of that horse. Again, when you go into the form, as you know, and you've got extensive back runs, it all sits there in the patterns, and that's something I'm a great believer in is the form patterns as well. While I do have a little bit of a go at maidens occasionally or whatever else, if there's a few runs or that, they're a different proposition, same as the class 1s, as opposed to, class 2s and above, where you've got more consistent, plenty of runs, etc. Yeah. All the 3-year-olds as well. And I do avoid, there's no really 2-year-old or very few 2-year-old races when they do start in country, even provincial. But, later 2-year-olds are okay, but I try to steer off those as well. That's because horses can improve or decline so much, especially in their second prep. The horse may have had 1 run, was shin sore, but when it comes back next time, it's right and away it goes. So, I like to, see what they've actually done. Yeah.
And whether a stable likes something too, especially a good stable that can rate their horses well, is all about the money movements, and I find that very much so in the younger ones. I very seldom back in a 2 or 3-year-old race, only because I like proven form, and I'm very much like it. It's like proven jockeys, you know. I like Jamie Carr in Melbourne. I like Kathy O'Hara, and I like Tegan Harrison, you know, as girl jockeys, because I think they're strong jockeys and they're thinkers. You know, they're not, and horses tend to run for them. Yeah, but when I'm doing the form, yeah, I say to guys, the major things you got to look at is the jockeys, the tracks, the going, you know, the distance, the barrier draw, the form, and the class. You know, if you can put those together, you can normally formulate a good race. You know, I'm don't do a lot of country racing, but in Victoria, I really like Pakenham. I like Mornington. You know, they call it horses for courses, that sort of thing. I like Kyneton, because Kyneton, with a lot of Kyneton starts, is you need to be on pace. You know, Moe is another one that on pace track, and certain trainers dominate those areas. So
short straights. But both those tracks I know well. Been to Kyneton probably as much as nearly any track in Victoria I've visited personally. Yep. I do like Kyneton, and it's got a short straight, and that's why, again, those sort of ones, again, it's horses for courses, and same as Moe, short straight, as opposed to Sale, which is more like a replica of Flemington, and you find some very good, as you know, stayers. Peter Moody back in his day and all those, they used to take a lot of good horses down to Sale, and then they go off at the Spring Carnival. That improved dramatically because they'd had those couple of settling runs, and away they go. They've won their maiden or class one down there, and they're good horses.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's the same as Pakenham. That's got a big, wide, open, long straight. You know, and those sort of tracks, like I love Melbourne. I mean, Flemington is because it gives every horse a chance.
Yeah, look, I if I'm going to do ratings on the one I do like to rate, if I'm rating in Melbourne, is certainly Flemington. I find by far the best, right? Because everybody's got a great chance. It's a great track. It's usually, the track is presented in excellent order. Caulfield, if it's raining a bit, can be very heavily towards the outside or whatever else. But you know, I'd agree with you. That spring carnival, the 4 days we have, the magic 4 days, I think is it's the best 4 days of racing you're going to get just about anywhere. Probably, you know, this side of Royal Ascot in the UK, it's by far our major best 4 days. I love New South Wales racing, but I don't think that the Sydney Carnival could ever compete with that magic 4 days.
Yeah, exactly. Gaz, you were going to do some black bookers.
Yeah, I've got some black bookers.
You've got a book.
No, I've got some black bookers, but just before I go on the black bookers, what I'd like to do is just go through this book here is called Figure Handicapping. It's a US book by James Quinn. Look, I have an extensive library of horse racing books, which I've been lucky over the years and in my business life to travel a lot to the US, UK, more so than Australia. There are places, especially in Vegas. There's a place called the Gambler's Bookshop, if anyone's ever been to Vegas, or unfortunately now it's a bit harder, but it specialises and has just about every horse racing book that's ever been produced in the world or whatever. I think you can get it online as well. This is a great book. This one is actually about something that I've always been into, which is about the actual figure handicapping and form patterns, and talks a lot about bounces. I bought it several years ago. I've just been rereading it because I knew we were going to do the show, and I like to go back regularly over books I've got. I've got an extensive library because there's things you just pick up that you forget or just refreshes you. One of the good things in this book is it really goes on about, like I do in my handicapping, is getting those patterns. And it's interesting how many horses that, if you look at them, they slowly but surely, first up, second up, then they peak as they go from 1,200 to maybe 1,200 first up, 1,300, 1,200 or a second up, and then fourth up, third or fourth up, they're up to their peak ratings. And that's how they go. And you can see it back if you've got a good form guide going back the last 20 starts or so. You can actually see last 3 or 4 preparations, there's a form pattern. And other times you can also see if there's what is called a bounce. And again, this comes with often the fact that the race may have been an upside down race, as I talk about how the sectionals or the leader turn pace may have been extremely fast or slow, and it's led to a bounce. And also because of a bias, where the actual rating of the horse was way above its normal or way below. You can throw that run out.
Those
That's why
benchmark changes immensely.
yeah. And look, in racing, just like if you follow any sport or whatever, people can, and as humans, we all can. We can have bad days. So can horses. We can't talk to them, but occasionally you can make good profits if you can sometimes forgive that one run, and if you can find a reason for that run to forgive, even better. And often it can be track condition, but sometimes it's not as obvious as the average person gets out of the basic papers. That's why looking at what was the pace of the race, right, to that particular leader sectional will tell you, hey, this horse, it was too fast and it got stuck 3 or 4 wide. So therefore, it's a total forgive run. Or other things may have gone with it, which don't get picked up always in the stewards' reports. Look, stewards do a great job, and the stewards' reports are fairly accurate, but not always in the country. And especially the more remote country areas I'm working on, that's why it's important to find or have access to that sort of data, because that will give you the extra edges to, again, explain the why of why the horse may have improved, and it could be a great reason, and you may then want to take that rating into account. But if a horse has had 20, 30 starts, it's not going to all of a sudden improve 5 lengths and think it's going to do it again the next one. But the public often gets conned in by that, and therefore it's overbet. And again, the cause and effect, you've got a horse that is going off much shorter than what it should be, which means that you'll be getting good value. Yeah. And that's one of the other advantages of doing your ratings, being firm, and, don't get too swayed by markets going in or out, right? I mean, if you believe and you've got confidence in what you do, then, quite often you can get very good value. Look, I find that the further out the horse is, and if it's a horse that's trading at like $6 or $7 and it goes out to 12, 13s, that's not a problem. Doesn't have an effect. The ones, and I do try to steer away, is the really short ones that may go $1.70 to $2.20. That's a big concern.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Anything over $3.50, I don't think that the market is such a problem. But in that really pointy end, which I do try to avoid, look, if I've got something really short and agree and everything lines up, I may have a go. But quite regularly, that's not where I make my money. I make my money more on the better value horses at the $3 plus. But as I said, everyone has to do what works for them. So that's my experience. And as I said, this is a very good book, but there are plenty of books. And if you go online, I'm sure you'll be able to find other books for you.
Tell you what, when we're finished today, I'll have a chat to you. You give me a snip of the cover of that book, and we'll get the link for that shop in Vegas, and we'll put it up, and the guys can go and have a look and see what they've got online, because I'm sure they have. And they can go over it. We can suggest books in the future. You talk about a book every single week.
Yeah, I will do that. Every couple of weeks we come on, I'll be doing that. Look, one of the other things I was going to talk about, you asked about horses to follow. Northern Black Book is what I look for. So I'm not so much about the horse that's coming from 14th to 2nd and everybody else saw it. What I look at is ones where I look at the replays, and if they went against the bias or whatever else, they're the ones I'm looking for. Last week at Lismore, as I said, Ross Stitt actually had 2 horses that came up for me out of my replays that I really liked. One was in race 1. It was the winner. It was the only horse on the day that came from 7th settling to win the race. Oh, so hot in the class 2. It's got a lot of upside. I think it's a good horse. And again, it won against the bias. So that's something to look forward to. And another horse I really liked, which was second up, and I think it'll be right third up, is called Editors. It was in the open race. And that's another one I've put into my database. At Wyong last week was a really good one in a Class 1 aspect ratio. It's a Johnny Sargent horse. Look, last prep, it was running in 3-year-old Group 1s. And I'll tell you, this horse goes into a midweek in Sydney. It's prepped to win. Now, it won by 4.25 in a Class 1, but I tell you, this horse, it's back on the up. And when it was young, as I said, last prep, they thought it was a pretty good horse. From Saturday's meeting, I've finished watching all my replays and all that now. The ones I really liked was, again, against the buy, was She's Ideal in race 3, right? I reckon between 1,900 to 2,400, next start, it'll be 4th up, Bjorn Baker. Do like that horse. In race 4, the 3-year-old, James Cummings colt, Destination, 1,100 metres. in around those 1,000, 1,100 metres races, it's a good one to follow. And the one I really like on the day, both out of the same stable, Rothfire, very sad what happened to it, and hopefully it does come back. I was on Ollie Kirk. I picked it the race before that I thought it was a sensational run. But I tell you, both it and its stablemate, North Pacific, perfect, both perfect for 1,600 metre races coming up over the spring. And I think you can follow both of them with a bit of confidence. They've got a bit of class, and they're both prepped to really go. It was 1,400 on Saturday, but I reckon they're both 1,600 metre horses. So they're the ones I like to follow.
Well, I tell you, put them in an email, send them to me.
Yep.
I do black bookers every week. I'll put them into that sheet, put your name and that. Give me a little bit of write-up on each. And what I'll do is I'll go and put the links in for so people can go and watch the race to show what you've done. So I'll put the link in with it as well.
Okay, great. Happy to do that each week.
Yeah, from that, that'll be put on the RaceBiz page.
Great. And also, when you do yours on every Tuesday, we're doing the webinars, which I do turn up to pretty much all the time. Happy as well to have a couple of black bookers there each week in the in-between week as well for the people who attend our webinars on a Tuesday night. Okay.
Well, we've got one tonight, 8 o'clock.
Yep, absolutely. But for next week's one, I'll have watched the tapes in between so that they're not too out of date. I do look at those and mark them down on all the tracks I follow.
And I'll also put the link in for the ebook and with the Excel spreadsheet to do the form. I'll put that at the bottom of this when we post this on Thursday. Okay, great. Look, just a couple of things I'm looking forward to coming up this week is Saturday is Randwick, and it should be a good track. And it's Epsom Metropolitan Premier Day, so that's a great meeting. Also, Newcastle this Saturday's got a benchmark 68 1,300 metre and a benchmark 64 1850 metre with good acceptances or good nominations at this stage. Looking forward to that. A bit sad, like I spoke about distance races, we are struggling in country New South Wales, provincial New South Wales, to get decent fields because the noms for Wagga on Saturday, which is a TAB meeting, only had 6 in the distance race, and the Newcastle one only has 7. And Ballina on Sunday, though, which is right in my heart that I really like because it's going to be a good track as well. We're looking ahead, should be really good, and there's a really good 1,900 metre Class 2 and a 1,600 metre benchmark 58. So that's what I'm looking forward to coming up over the next week. Okay, so we got Flemington on Saturday. And Flemington Saturday too, yes. And Flemington, which is the Turnbull Stakes Day. Right, so there's a couple of good races there. I'll be doing the ratings on that as well. So next week I'll have some black bookers as well for us to there. I have got a couple here, but because I've been off for the week, I'd rather just look a couple more days before I post them. So if you email me your stuff, yes, I'll do that. Throw it in the black bookers. So thanks again, Gaz. No worries. I'll see you tonight, 8 o'clock. Absolutely, and I'm just off now to finish off doing Grafton. There's a couple of good races coming up today at Grafton, so all right, mate. Let's get back into it. Thank you. Cheers, mate. Bye. Thanks. Bye.